Hi there, Malcolm here with my 172nd Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my catch-up from May, having not done a film for last month. I've got a huge pile of books to get through, so let's get cracking. First up, it's the numbers game. So for May, I managed to complete 9 books, totaling 2,638 pages, putting me 1,560 pages up on that same time last year. All good. So first up is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was on Audible, read by Jamie Bell, and I have done a separate video to tell you my thoughts on Frankenstein, and judging from the feedback I've had so far, it's an entertaining one. Also finished Buffy the Vampire Slayer Out of the Woodwork. This graphic novel sees some sort of giant bug invasion of Sunnydale and our hapless heroes trying to save the day once again. It works quite cartoony, but it works for the story. Buy it. And after that I then read, or I should say finished reading, West of Eden by Harry Harrison. This massive book took me quite a while to get through, and looks at the world as if the dinosaurs never died out and in fact evolved into dinosaur people, the Yeleni. And with the encroaching ice age, the humans that have evolved are being pushed down from the mountains into the Yeleni's world, and these two species just don't get on. The story follows young Kerrick, the sole survivor of his tribe of humans who have been slaughtered by a band of Yeleni, and as he's taken as a captive back to the Yeleni cities, where he learns their ways and just tries to survive. Absolutely fantastic beginning of a trilogy. Highly recommend it. Although I would say, because it was published back in 1985, it's based on some science that has been superseded by more recent discoveries. But don't let that dissuade you. Absolutely booktastic. Brilliant book. And after that I then read my book of the month, Antimatter Blues by Edward Ashton, book 2 of the Mickey 7 series. Now ordinarily I like to do individual videos for my books of the month, but this one being a direct sequel would be very spoilerage and I can't really tell you much about it without giving away what happens in book 1. But book 1 ends in a big lie, and this one carries on with this lie growing bigger and bigger as a result, and things have to happen because of it. I can't really give very much more than that. I think on the whole, not as good as the first one. This one was a lot more of a run-of-the-mill adventure story. Still really enjoyed it, glad I read it, glad I bought it. Got some really fun characters and scenarios in here. And after that I then read The Time-Travelling Caveman by Terry Pratchett. And this collects a whole bunch of his earlier short stories that he wrote for the local paper back when he was a burgeoning writer. And so one could argue the quality of the stories aren't that great, but the humour's there, and you can certainly see some of the ideas hatching that then feed into the Discworld series. And the stories are covered in fun illustrations by Mark Beach. Buy it. And then after that, another Buffy graphic novel, The Death of Buffy. This contains 2 stories, one, The Death of Buffy, and another one called The Withdrawal, a much shorter story. But the main story follows Buffy's friends as they try to deal with her demise. She's dead, she's buried, but life in Sunnydale, for those who are still living, must go on. And it's them just coming to terms with this new reality. Some nice artwork, some clever ideas, worth buying. And then after that I then moved on to Lords and Ladies by Terry Pratchett, based back in the realm of Lanka with the witches as the elves try to take over. As we have Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og trying to convince the local population that elves are a bad thing. Sprinkling in some young upstart witches, a royal wedding, and some return characters from other adventures, and we got a pretty solid story. Loosely based around William Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night's Dream, but very much its own thing, full of wit and humour, and in my opinion one of the stronger witches stories. Booktastic. And then after that I then read Marvel, Curse of the Man-Thing. Now Man-Thing is a Marvel character that I have had next to no knowledge about whatsoever, and so I was curious to know a bit more, which is why I picked this one up. And what follows is a pretty interesting adventure about what happens if his power is taken and abused by someone else. Full of highly explosive action and some clever stuff as well. It's followed by 2 original stories, one showing his first appearance in the first Savage Tales back in 1971, and a story for Man-Thing number 12 from 1974. 2 great little tales just fleshing out further the story of Man-Thing and what he is. Worth buying. And then after that, and then finally, instead of reading what I was supposed to read next, I read Men-at-Arms by Terry Pratchett. And seeing that this was the next Discworld book to read, I couldn't not read it. So I totally devoured this excellent follow-up to Guards Guards, with the Night Watch being a little bit bigger and more accommodating to people of different types. Specifically some actual dwarves, trolls, and a woman. Well, most of the time she is anyway. And in this fantastic adventure, our crew of misfits have to try to investigate a series of murders caused by the Disc's first gun. If you haven't read Guards first, I recommend going and read that one first and then reading this, but this one is such a good follow-up to Guards and a pretty good whodunit as well. Booktastic. So that was May. Now on to June, where I only managed 6 books, totaling 1,155 pages, but still keeping me 1,009 pages ahead of the previous year. First up was my book of the month, Cobalt Blue by Matthew Riley. More accurately, this would be described as a novella with 2 short stories, and as such I didn't think it warranted its own video. In the story, 35 years ago, a thing happened imbuing an American and a Russian with superhuman powers of equal magnitude. These 2 heroes looked after their own turf and ensured that the other country kept its own borders. Unfortunately, the American's hero dies of old age, having been older at the time when they were both given these powers, and the Russian hero wastes no time of coming over to America to cause untold quantities of damage. And the only people who could stand in his way are the offspring of the American's hero. Most are celebrities and known about, but one, Cobalt Blue, has very much lived in the shadows, and it's her story that we follow as this Russian villain rains his destruction upon the country of America. Like with any other Matthew Riley book, full of intense action and death, thing people would normally describe as a real page-turner, and indeed it was. The premise may have been a little bit silly, but I really enjoyed it. The 2 follow-up short stories tie into some of these other works. The first is a prequel to the Jack West Jr. series, Jack West Jr. and the Hero's Helmet, basically detailing the adventures that Jack was on when he acquired his signature fireman's helmet. A little bit of fun, if a bit redundant. I normally find these how do they get the name or how do they get the trinket stories rather pointless, and a lot of the fun is in the not knowing. But anyway, it was okay. The second one is Roger Ascham and the King's Lost Girl, and it's the prequel to the novel The Tournament, a book I didn't particularly enjoy very much, but found this investigation story much more interesting and found the whole book to be worth buying. And then after that I then read Buffy the Vampire Slayer Ugly Little Monsters. Again, there are a couple of stories in this one, but the main one, Ugly Little Monsters, sees our heroes being besieged by 3 ugly little monsters that are pretty much indestructible, and them having to try and work out how to stop them. Oh, it was quite fun. Though I did find the ugly little monsters to be, okay, a little bit xenomorphic, but not necessarily that scary by it. And then after that is Quantum Leap Angels Unaware by L. Elizabeth Storm. And this one sees Sam leap into a priest, a rather humorless intellectual who once taught Sam. As he travels to a monastery to give a symposium over the weekend, Al has a massive argument with Ziggy about the reason why Sam has leapt into this particular timeline, because in Sam's own history, he's just about to step inside the quantum chamber and start the whole process off. And Ziggy believes that Sam needs to just make one phone call to himself to stop him jumping in the quantum chamber. Whereas Al believes that Sam is there to stop a young woman from dying. Now, for the most part, I really enjoyed the story. I thought it flowed really well. However, there's a character in it called Angela, who I had to do a bit of research on, that she actually featured in an episode in the TV series. Haven't seen that episode. And I found that the explanation about who she was and how she came to be fitting into the whole story unsatisfactory. I don't know if it's explained better in the show. But apart from that, it was really good. And the ending completely blindsided me. I actually teared up, I'm ashamed to say. Yeah, buy it. And after that is the new Ghostbusters. This is book 5 of this series. I picked it up the other day at a comic book shop. I have read it before. It was a book I borrowed from the library. Really enjoyed it. And in it, the Ghostbusters are kidnapped by a ghost and sent to limbo or somewhere similar, leaving Janine and some of the other characters previously encountered in this series to form a new team to go and try and A, stop the ghosts doing what they normally do, and B, retrieve the lost Ghostbusters. Now, I read this around the same sort of time as the new Ghostbusters film came out with the all-female lead. I'm still yet to watch it. We've got it on DVD downstairs, just haven't got round to it yet. And frankly, I'm in no particular hurry to. I will do it at some point. But what I've heard about the film, it's not great. However, the fact that it's led by female Ghostbusters isn't my issue. This is a largely female-led team. The one guy is actually a criminal from a previous episode who's blackmailed into helping them. But I found this team to be the definitive, if you're going to have a female-led Ghostbusters team, do it like this. Now, this story worked on a lot of levels, not just on the old Ghostbusting. Really clever book. Now, I suppose it does help a little bit to have read the previous books to understand who these other characters are. The pale one helps in Ray's occult bookshop. This lady, I think, is an FBI agent who has crossed paths with Ghostbusters before. And as I said, this guy, I think, tried starting up his own Ghostbuster business to rival the original, but in a much less scrupulous way. I love the artwork. It's a little bit zany, but it really works. Booktastic. And then after that, I reread Shadow of the Jaguar, primeval novel by Stephen Seville. Despite the creature pictured on the front cover and the title of the book, it doesn't actually feature jaguars in it anywhere. And if anything, they're saber-toothed marsupials. But anyway, in the jungles of Brazil, an anomaly opens up and two brothers are attacked. And so Cutter and his team are sent there to try and retrieve the survivor and to prove or disprove the existence of an anomaly. Anomaly. Set after the series is Trouser of Time bait and switch in the first season. So Cutter is now mourning the disappearance of Claudia Brown while making goo-goo eyes at her alter ego Jenny. The story was alright. It sort of chugged along a bit slow. I took a huge length of time to even get to find out whether or not the anomaly is real or not, and to meet our first creature. But it does paint a good picture about international operations, certainly dealing with regions with high corruption. But I did actually find this a bit boring at times. It's worth reading if you're a fan of the show, but wasn't great. And after that, I then read Back to the Future, Untold Tales and Alternate Timelines. Didn't even know this was a thing, so I had to pick it up when I saw it. And this is a series of short stories that add to the main trilogy without being detrimental to any of it. Now, what happened to Biff when he stole the DeLorean? How did Marty and Doc meet? Each story has its own different art style and story style, but they're all tied together loosely, with the Doc back in the Wild West telling his family stories, which then jump us to the adventure as he tells the story. Not required reading necessarily, but a whole lot of fun, and wonderfully complements the original trilogy. Booktastic. So there we go, that is what I managed to read over the last 2 months. What's my plan for July? First up is to finish The Pearls of Lutra by Brian Jacks. This is a Redwall novel. Desperately tried to finish it before the end of the month, but didn't. And this adventure sees the abbot of Redwall be kidnapped by a bunch of pirates, and a new Martin the Warrior leads an expedition to go and rescue him, and having teamed up with an otter with her own vendetta against the pirates. And then when I've finished that, which should be tonight, I hope, I then move on to my book of the month, Wrath of the Lemming Men by Toby Frost, book 3 of the Chronicles of Isambard Smith, a series which is a highly satirical look at the British Empire and imperialism, as we follow the proud Britishman Isambard on his haphazard adventures, as he's accompanied by his skull-collecting alien friend, who closely resembles a predator, and Pilot, who was originally designed as a sex bot. That sort of adventure, looking forward to it. I love the first two. No idea what this one's about though. Once I finish that, I'll then move on to a Buffy the Vampire Slayer novel, How I Survived My Summer Vacation, Volume 1, which happens to be a collection of short stories from the likes of Cameron Doki, Nancy Holder, Yvonne Navarro, Paul Ruditis and Michelle West, of all people. So there we go. It's quite a thin one, so I should whiz through that quite quickly. And when I do, I'll then move on to Halo, Broken Circle by John Shirley. I've amassed quite a large Halo book collection now, so I figured I ought to get around to try and read them all. So chronologically, this is the earliest one I've got. I know the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear is before this. I have previously borrowed them from the library. I didn't particularly enjoy them much. Might be worth another go now. I have more of an understanding about the lore. But anyway, this one is the earliest one chronologically that I own. So I'll start with this and intend to move my way chronologically through all the books. No idea what this one's about. Looks like there's a war between the prophets and the elites. Looking forward to it anyway. And once I've read that, I'll then move on to Predator, South China Sea by Jeff Vandermeer. I've also collected a lot of Alien and Predator books, and I want to try and get through those as well. I've read a lot of them, but not all of them. And from what I can tell, this looks to be the closest novel to the original film in terms of jungle, predator, men with guns. Obviously, it's a different story, but there's going to be similarities. Looking forward to that one. And then finally, I'll then try and read Species, novelisation of the film by Yvonne Navarro. SETI receive a message from the stars, which they decode, and it reveals a DNA sequence, one they're able to replicate and inject into an ova, and they grow a small child, lose their bottle and try and kill her. She escapes the facility, and the thing becomes a monster hunting type adventure. A story full of boobs and gruesome violence. I've had this on my shelf for a while, so we'll finally get around to reading it. And the other day, I managed to find the Box Tree graphic novel of the same. So I might read these in tandem with each other, just for the full experience. I'm currently working my way through Back to the Future Book 2, Continuum Conundrum, which acts as the direct sequel to Back to the Future 3. Enjoying it so far. And I'm also working my way through the Buffy graphic novels. Got False Memories next to get through. And I'm still reading the Shadow Casket Book 2 of the Darkwater Legacy series by Chris Wooding to my wife. We're about halfway through now. Epic fantasy, epic adventure, great stuff. So there we go, a lot of books there to wave at you, a lot of books I've got to put away. So have you read any of those? You like them, not like them? What's your planned reading for the next month? Or what have you managed to read over the last month? Comments below please. But as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, please keep it to yourself. Thank you, and until next time, see you later.